Hi, I'm Susanna. I'm a social media strategist and consultant at Nomad Elite, where we help people from all over the world, wealthy individuals, millionaires, relocate to a more tax-friendly and liberal country. Today we're talking about Italian residency. Obtaining residency in Italy can be a complex process as in any other country, but there are a few pathways in order to do so. And today we're now analyzing the most common pathways in order to obtain Italian citizenship. Let's start with a basic concept. Foreigners who enter Italy are allowed freely in the country for a period of 90 days. So if you are a member of the European Union, you are allowed in Italy, of course, more than that, because you have to remember that by obtaining the citizenship in any country of the European Union, you are freely allowed in all the other member countries of the Union as well. But if you're a non-European citizen, then you're allowed in the country freely for a period of maximum 90 days. After 90 days, you will need to apply and obtain a residence permit, also known as permesso di soggiorno. There are definitely two types of residency you can obtain, a temporary residency and a permanent residency, and of course one step is preliminary to the other. So first you have to obtain a temporary residence permit, so a temporary residency, and you can do so just when you hold a visa, and you can hold a student visa, a work visa, or you can apply for family reunification, or you can have an investor visa. There are definitely a lot of options. But of course, the validity of the residence permit depends on the kind of visa you are in possession of. Let's start with the work visa, which is the most common visa people apply for. In fact, Italian authorities and the government allows for a maximum of visa that they can grant yearly. Last year in 2023, almost 83,000 visa were granted to foreigners who were looking for a job in Italy. To employ a foreigner, Italian companies have to go through a process which might sound a bit complicated, so they have to definitely rely on authorities such as the immigration office and the employment center. And the employment center, the companies have to declare to the employment center that there are no professional among the actual residents that can perform the job that they are looking for, and this is necessary in order to hire new residents. So after obtaining confirmation from the employment center, the companies can apply to the immigration desk for a foreign employee authorization. So once the immigration desk then authorizes the foreign employer to work in the country, then they have to ask to their embassy or consulate in their home country or country of residence of the foreign employer to issue a visa for them. Of course, there are a few restrictions. So if the government and the employment center believes that the candidate is not suited or could be a threat to the security and safety of the country, they can definitely decide not to grant that authorization. But the authorization is usually granted if you meet all the requirements. And when it comes to the time frame for obtainment, you have to allow a period of 90 days in order for the authority to release the authorization. So in those 90 days, there is like a month and a half for the employer to get confirmation from the employment center, and after that the visa is processed within 20 days. So let's say that we stay in a time frame of 90 days total. Once the visa is released, that visa has a validity which is based on the validity of the contract of the employer. We're talking now of dependent work. So if the employer contract is a contract for 1 year, then the validity of the visa is 1 year or 2 years in case that's the case and it applies. So it depends on the kind of contract between the employer and the employee. But what happens if you lose your job while you are on a employment work visa? This is something that is very asked, and I think that most people assume that you are definitely in that case deprived of your visa, but that's not what actually happens. You can apply for a specific visa, which is the pending employment visa. The pending employment visa is valid for at least a year, but you have to declare that you are an unemployed person, or better, you have to be declared as an employed person by the employment center. Of course, to keep your residency and being unemployed, you have to present yourself at the employment center and declare your set of skills, what you're looking for. So briefly, you have to declare that you are actually looking for a job in order to maintain your residence permit in Italy. To keep obtaining this residency for pending employment, the applicant must send documents to the immigration desk. Among these documents, you might have to send a filled-in form provided by the desk itself, a passport copy, a certificate from the employment center stating that the applicant's registration is on the employment list. So a few formalities you have to comply with, but in the end, you are not deprived of your visa if you lose your job while you are on a work visa in Italy. So what we've been discussing so far applies to all the dependent work visas, but what if you are someone who wants to start their own company and wants to be their own boss in a way? This is called self-employment and is a very popular option. There is a different set of rules that applies to you in case you are a self-employer. So I'm talking about someone who wants to open a restaurant or open a company. In this case, you have to be authorized by the competent authority to perform the activity you want to perform within the country. The authority that applies to you, so your competent authority, depends on the kind of activity you want to perform. So in case you want to open a company, the authority you will have to rely to is the Chamber of Commerce. However, if you want to open a restaurant, you have to rely to the Department of Health spread among the country. To be authorized to work, you have to undergo a series of questions in order to verify whether you meet the requirements. So you will be authorized basically if you have adequate resources to fund your activity, the activity you plan to import in the country. You have to meet the legal requirement for performance of the activity. You have to possess all the necessary certification, which depend of course on the kind of activity you want to carry out in the country. And then you have to be registered with the Chamber of Commerce. Once your activity is approved and you obtain the necessary authorization by the competent authority, then this authority will ask your embassy or consulate in your own country or country of residence to release a visa. You have 6 months to collect your visa before entering, and then you can enter in the country, but within 8 days upon your arrival, you have to sort of convalidate your visa, which means applying for a residence permit. So this is just to say that the visa is preliminary to the residence permit, which we will then obtain on the base of your visa as a self-employer. To apply for a residence permit, you have to go to another authority, which is called Questura, so Police headquarters for immigration. So far, we've been talking about work visas and self-employment visas as well, but what if that condition doesn't apply to you? In that case, you can definitely try and see if this other kind of visa applies to you, which is the student visa. And you might be thinking that you have not the age to require a student visa, but actually you do. You can apply to any university as long as you are interested in a course of study. So there are a lot of ways to do so, and there are certain spots that Italian university automatically reserve for international students each year. So if you are currently enrolling to a university, you can definitely come to Italy as an exchange person with an exchange program. But if you want to apply from scratch to an Italian university, then you can definitely apply for a student visa and be allowed in the country for as long as your course of studies lasts. Of course, to obtain that visa, you will be asked a series of documents who are partially different from the ones that we've mentioned before. So you can be asked to provide proof of enrollment or pre-enrollment, copy of your passport and passport photos. All the administrative things will be specified from the authorities you apply to, but basically what's important is to provide that you have proof of accommodation and sufficient fund. Also, you will need to provide with a certificate of your educational history, so which high school you went to, which other education you got in your home country, all sort of stuff. The same rule applies here. Once you obtain your student visa, then you have 8 days to convalidate your visa, or in other terms, to apply for a residence permit based on the visa you obtained in your home country. Lastly, if you have a family member who is a resident in Italy, you might be eligible to apply for a family reunification visa. This applies if your spouse is a resident, if you have children under 18 who are residents, or if you have parents over the age of 65 who are residents and you are the only carer they can benefit from. So this is definitely like a different option that doesn't apply to many of the people watching this video, but still you might have a spouse that is in your home country, or you might have parents that live in Italy, or maybe they only have residency. So in that case, you could definitely be eligible for family reunification. So you will have to provide a few documents such as the passport photos, all application form provided by the authorities you initiate your application through, and then you will have to obtain a nulla osta, which is a special authorization for visa obtainment from the immigration desk, and you will then obtain copy of the person who is inviting you. So one of the persons we mentioned before, either your minor child, your spouse, or your parents over the age of 65, of course. And then you will need to provide proof of your relationship with them, so civil registry attesting that you have a family relation with those people. And then you will need proof of accommodation, and then within 90 days the sportello unico immigrazione should give you the nulla osta, so the authorization. So I would say that a period of 90 days is pretty common in order to obtain residency in Italy for the different pathways we've been analyzing so far. These listed above are just a few of the most common ways to obtain residency in Italy. There are definitely more than can apply to your specific case, and if you want to hear more about it and determine which way you could better come in the country and be allowed to obtain a residence permit in the country of Italy, then you have definitely to reach out to us. We are a full package relocation agency called Nomad Elite, who helps people from all over the world relocating to more tax-friendly and liberal countries. Like this video, comment if you want to hear more from us, and definitely reach out.